Right. Get ready for a deep dive because we're going into a life that's, well, let's just say it's complicated.
Intriguing.
Talking about Mary Clement. And judging by what you told us, you seem to enjoy a good true crime story.
I do. Mysteries are fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. So you found this Wikipedia article just titled Mary Clement. Seems pretty basic, right?
Right.
But hold on, because this story, well, it takes some unexpected turns. I mean, we're talking family drama, betrayals, and, the question of how well we can ever really know someone.
Oh, that's always a good question, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What strikes me right away is this contrast. You have these ordinary beginnings, and then, well, things take a dark turn.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the calm before the storm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Mary, she was born in Luxembourg in 1863,
Okay.
immigrated into the U.S. with her family, settled in Dubuque, Iowa. And here's something that adds another layer to her story.
Yeah.
She had this spinal column defect, and it affected her legs.
Oh.
So imagine the challenges back then in the 1800s with limited mobility. It really makes you think about how different life was.
Absolutely.
But things get really dark really quickly. In 1880, her 6-year-old sister, Annie, dies.
Ah.
And they said it was from overeating.
Overeating. That's interesting, especially back then.
Right.
I mean, diagnoses in the 1880s weren't as precise, right? Imagine a world without x-rays or blood tests or a good understanding of diseases. Something like overeating, well, it could have been a symptom of something way more complex, maybe even something treatable today.
Yeah, it's like trying to solve a puzzle with like half the pieces missing.
Right, exactly.
Tragically, the deaths in Mary's family didn't stop there.
Oh, no.
Over the next 5 years, her mother, another sister, Lena, and her father all died. Convulsions, heart failure, and unidentified illness. I mean, it's a pattern you can't just ignore, even back then.
Definitely not. And that's what makes this case so intriguing, right? You have these deaths seemingly unconnected, but all shrouded in the mystery of how medicine was practiced back then. It makes you wonder, were these natural deaths? Or was there something more going on?
Yeah, it's like the first act of a mystery. You're just waiting for the detective to show up and start connecting the dots.
Exactly.
So fast forward to 1885, Mary moves in with her sister Catherine and her family in Rose Hill, Illinois.
Okay.
And wouldn't you know it, every time Mary cooks, the whole family gets sick.
Oh, come.
Seriously. Violently ill, especially after eating her soup.
Soup, huh? Now, hold on. Even in the 1880s, people weren't naive. If someone got sick every time a specific person cooked, that would raise some eyebrows, don't you think?
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah. Did anyone suspect Mary at this point, or were they just blinded by, family trust?
Well, Catherine's husband, Michel Frères, he seems like he was a pretty sharp guy. He finds this powder in his backyard, a mysterious powder. And then he notices a similar sediment in the family's soup bowls. After they all get sick, of course. Pretty smart, right?
Very perceptive.
He takes the powder and the soup to doctors in Evanston. You're not going to believe this.
What did they find?
Arsenic.
Wow. Arsenic poisoning, it was pretty common back then in the 19th century.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It was easy to get a hold of, and the effects, they were slow and painful. It made it, a popular choice for people who wanted to, let's just say, get rid of someone quietly.
That's a chilling thought. So with the arsenic discovered, all eyes turned to Mary.
This is where it gets interesting, right? We've got a suspect, maybe a motive, and a victim who barely escaped.
Right.
The question is Mary behind all this, or is it just a terrible misunderstanding?
Exactly. And of course, Mary denies everything at first.
Of course.
And then when she's arrested, she has this outburst, this dramatic scene where she claims her sister is framing her for money.
Oh, wow. That outburst, you got to think, is that genuine fear and confusion? Or is it all an act, trying to make people believe her?
It's like something out of a movie. And just when you think you're starting to figure her out, she drops a bomb. She confesses not just to poisoning the Frères family, but also to killing her parents and her sister Lena.
She confesses to everything.
Everything. Her explanation. She felt like she had to end their suffering.
Mercy killing. That's a really complicated concept, especially back then. Euthanasia was taboo, seen very differently than it is today.
Right.
But if that's the motive, it gets even more confusing. Did she really believe she was being compassionate? Or is that just an excuse for something much darker?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And then there's her talk about money. On one hand, she says she hates it, but then there's evidence she spent it pretty freely. Is she hiding a financial motive? Or is there something else we're missing about how she felt about money?
You know, we're trying to piece this story together with just fragments of information, right? News reports, court documents, maybe a few letters. We don't know what was going on in her head. It's like reading the first few chapters of a book and trying to guess the ending.
Totally. And just when you think you're starting to get her, Mary throws another curveball.
Oh no, what now?
She takes back her confession, says she doesn't remember making it, or maybe even that she never did.
That changes things. This makes me think about her mental state. The doctor who examined her said she was, and I quote, nervous and sensitive.
Oh, interesting.
But think about it. In the late 1800s, mental health wasn't understood like it is now. What we might see as a serious mental illness could have been dismissed as, I don't know, just being a bit strange. So was Mary really confused because of some mental instability? Or was this another trick to get the charges dropped?
Like a riddle wrapped in a mystery,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Okay, so now we're at the trial, and it seems to move pretty fast.
Okay.
But there's this detail, and it really creeps me out. Mary, she was totally calm during the whole thing.
Really?
Yeah, even the press found it strange. It's a detail that sticks with you.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it? Was that calmness guilt? Or maybe she just accepted her fate.
Or maybe.
Or could it be, and this is a thought, that it was all an act? Remember, people said Mary was charming, even persuasive. Maybe she was using that to her advantage, making the jury see her as a victim.
Wow.
Consciously or not, it's possible.
It's like she was playing this high-stakes game with her life on the line.
Exactly.
So, Michel Ferrers gives his testimony. They confirm the arsenic, and Mary is found guilty. But get this, she only gets 1 year in jail.
1 year. That's a light sentence for what she confessed to.
Yeah, it makes you think about how things were back then, the role of gender in the courts, and maybe even the power of Mary's charm, swaying the judge. It's like the legal system didn't know what to do with her.
It really is a fascinating case.
And, wait, there's more. From prison, Mary writes a letter confessing to all the murders.
All of them.
Even little Annie's.
Wow.
And the thing is, she seems happy about her short sentence. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about guilt and remorse.
Yeah, it's unsettling. Is she being genuine, or is this another manipulation tactic?
It's mind-blowing. So, fast forward to Mary's later life. She ends up living with, get this, the Ferrers family.
The same family she tried to poison?
Yep, same ones.
That's incredible. It's like something out of Shakespeare.
Right.
You have the victim welcoming back the person who supposedly harmed them.
Exactly.
It really makes you think, was this forgiveness? Or a way to make sure she was taken care of and wouldn't cause any more trouble? Or maybe something else entirely?
It's like a family drama where the lines between love, hate, and forgiveness are completely blurred.
Yeah, for sure.
And here's the kicker. The family remembers her as a nice old lady.
Yeah.
Loved fancy hats, never talked about the past.
Yeah.
Died in 1944 at the age of 81. So was Mary Clement a cold-blooded killer who fooled everyone? Or a troubled soul pushed to do terrible things?
That's the big question about Mary Clement, isn't it? Everything we know about her shows a life full of tragedy, contradictions, and the constant question of why she did what she did.
Yeah, we're left with these pieces of information, rumors, speculation. We have to put the puzzle together. But we may never have all the pieces.
And that's what makes this dive so fascinating. It reminds us that history isn't just names and dates. It's about real people with complicated lives, some much darker than we can imagine.
It's like we're looking through a window into the past, trying to understand someone who lived in a very different world. And it makes us face this uncomfortable truth that the line between good and evil, sane and insane, can be really, really thin.
Absolutely.
And on that note, let's explore Mary Clement's story even further. Let's look at her possible motives, the society she lived in, and those haunting questions that surround her life and legacy.
Sounds good to me. Let's dive in. So we're digging deeper into Mary Clement's life, and it seems the more we learn, the more questions we have.
It really is like a puzzle in the dark, isn't it? Some pieces are missing, and some just don't seem to fit.
Exactly. And there's that unsettling question. Was her life after prison, that seemingly normal life, real, or was it all an act?
Right, like she was hiding something. What about those conflicting statements about money? Saying she hated it but spending it freely. It's confusing.
It is. If she truly despised money, why target her own family who would inherit it? That's a contradiction that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if money was just a way to get something else, like control, or maybe even a twisted sense of power.
It's possible. And when we talk about motives, we've considered mercy killing, we've talked about financial gain, but are we missing something? What else could have driven her to do such extreme things?
That's a good question.
We need to remember the time period, the late 19th century. Back then, mental health was a very different concept. Conditions that we treat today might have been completely misunderstood.
Oh, you mean like maybe Mary had a mental illness that wasn't diagnosed or treated?
Exactly. Imagine living in a time when mental health was seen as something shameful, something to hide. It makes you think about how someone in Mary's position would even get help.
It really does.
And without any modern psychological evaluations, we're just guessing here, did mental illness play a role? Or was she a master manipulator, pretending to be unstable to avoid a harsher punishment?
It's like trying to understand a book written in a language we barely know. We can see the words, but the meaning, the real meaning, is hidden. And speaking of hidden things, let's go back to the arsenic. It's slow acting, which tells us this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision.
Right, it was planned.
Exactly. And the choice of arsenic itself is interesting. It was everywhere in the 19th century. Medicines, pesticides, you name it. And its effects, well, they could look like a normal illness, making it hard to detect at first. It was the perfect poison if you wanted to make a murder look natural.
It's chilling when you think about it that way. So where did Mary get the arsenic? Could she just walk into a store and buy it?
Well, the sources we have don't tell us. But let's think about it. Maybe she lied, said she needed it for bugs or something.
Maybe.
Or maybe she got it from her family's farm or some local business. Remember, arsenic was everywhere back then.
True. It really shows how different things were. Today, trying to buy arsenic would raise all sorts of red flags.
Exactly. It was probably as easy as buying flour back then.
It highlights a big difference, too, forensics in the 19th century. Investigations were basic compared to today. They didn't have fingerprinting like we do, and DNA analysis, forget about it. So proving poisoning relied on witnesses, clues, and chemical tests, which weren't always accurate.
It's incredible how far we've come with forensic science. To solve a crime like this back then, without our modern tools, would be almost impossible.
It would be like wandering through a maze in the dark. And that lack of knowledge probably played a part in Mary's trial, maybe even in that surprisingly lenient sentence.
It makes you wonder, would a modern court with DNA evidence and psychological profiling have seen Mary differently? Would the outcome have changed?
It's a question we can't answer for sure, but the Mary Clement case really shows how criminal justice has evolved and how challenging it is to understand human behavior across time.
Right. It reminds us that history isn't just dates and battles. It's real people living through incredibly complex situations. And their stories can teach us more about ourselves than any textbook. But before we get too philosophical, let's get back to Mary. Specifically, her confession and then taking it back. Was she playing games with the authorities, trying to manipulate the system?
It's possible. She was described as intelligent and resourceful, right? Maybe she realized confessing, especially if she seemed mentally unstable, might get her a lighter sentence. And then by retracting the confession, she could create doubt, make people think she was forced or confused.
Like a chess game. Each move carefully planned.
Exactly. And then there's the biggest mystery of all her later life with the Frères family, the people she supposedly poisoned taking her in. That's just bizarre.
It is. Was it true forgiveness? Were they afraid of what she might do if she was on her own? Or was there some other reason?
Imagine living with someone who tried to kill you. Was there real peace in that house? Or were they always worried, never knowing if she was truly a nice old lady or just pretending?
That's a scary thought. And it makes you think, what was going on in Mary's mind all those years? Did she ever really face what she had done? Or did she bury it all under a mask of normalcy?
We may never know the answers. But the fact that we're still asking these questions over 100 years later shows how powerful Mary Clement's story is.
It's a story that makes us think about the good and bad in all of us, about the blurred lines between victims and those who harm them. It makes us question what we think we know about truth. But we have one more chapter to explore the impact of Mary's actions and the questions that remain about her legacy. Welcome back. It's amazing how, one Wikipedia article can lead us down such a rabbit hole.
It really is. Shows the power of curiosity, right? One question can spark a journey through history, uncovering stories that make you think differently about people.
Exactly. We've talked about the poisonings, the confessions, that short sentence, and her quiet later life. But I keep coming back to that strange calmness Mary had during her trial.
Yeah, it is unsettling, especially with such serious accusations against her. It makes you think, was she really that detached? Or was it a way to cope with all the fear and guilt?
Could it have been like a strategy? Maybe she was trying to appear innocent or even insane to influence the jury.
It's definitely possible. Mary was smart, right? Maybe she knew that appearing calm would work in her favor. Or, and this is a bit more chilling, maybe it was something deeper. Maybe she really didn't feel any remorse.
Wow, wait, that's creepy. And then she ends up living with the Freres family, the one she supposedly tried to poison. It's just bizarre.
It really is like something out of a book or a movie. Did they truly forgive her? Or were they scared of what she might do?
Right. Imagine living with someone who tried to kill you. Were they always on edge, wondering if the nice old lady was just an act?
We can only guess with the information we have. But it makes you think about forgiveness, family, and if someone like Mary could ever truly change.
It really makes you question everything. It's like the line between victim and criminal is completely blurred.
Exactly. And maybe that's the biggest lesson from Mary Clement's life. History isn't always neat and tidy. It's full of stories that don't fit into simple categories.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most interesting mysteries are the ones we can't solve. They force us to question everything and see things from different perspectives, even if it makes us uncomfortable.
And that's where growth comes from, right?
Yeah.
Being okay with not knowing everything. It opens you up to new ideas and a better understanding of how complicated people can be.
That's a great way to put it. So our deep dive into Mary Clement's life leaves us with more questions than answers.
That's often the case with these deep dives.
But maybe that's okay. Maybe it's not about having all the answers. Maybe it's about accepting that some stories, like people themselves, will always have some mystery to them.
And that's what makes history so fascinating. It's a constant invitation to keep exploring, asking questions, and looking for those hidden truths.
Well said. So until next time, keep those deep dives going. You never know what amazing stories you'll uncover.